Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Amber. I want to go through my top 10 books of 2024. These are all going to be first time reads. I will not be including any rereads in here, and they're in no particular order. So I didn't rank them from like bottom to all-time favorite. It's just kind of as I was scrolling through the ones that caught my eye. And the thing about this list is going through these, I kind of realized some of these I either didn't rate 5 stars, but as time has gone on, they've kind of developed into 5 stars. It's like the 4.5, 4.75 stars that I couldn't really decide, and I went with the lower option, but they're ones that have stuck with me and have been things that I have actively thought about multiple times since reading it and have debated on even going back and doing a reread of them. And honestly, some of the ones that I ranked 5 stars, looking back, just didn't even make it onto this. So, yeah. I guess let's just get right on into it. And the first one I'm going to talk about is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This one, I've talked about this so many times. Anybody who's seen any of my other recent videos are probably sick of hearing about this book, but I did love this book. I had a very fun time. But this is one that I definitely want to go do a reread because I have forgot a lot of what happens. I just remember, like, while I was reading it, I could not put it down. This was all I wanted to read and all I wanted to do. So it's definitely addictive. It's not as intimidating as it appears. And it was a fun time, and I have a lot of tabs in here. A lot. And I really need to go back and read this. So in this one, you have the dragons who end up going skyward after they die, and they curl up into moons. And that's like the whole backstory to, not the backstory, but that's like the whole thing that happens with the dragons, and they end up starting to fall, which isn't supposed to happen. In this, you're following Rave, who is a Elding Blade, which is like the assassins to the crown, and they're meant to capture a member of the Oath, which the Fear du Oath is like the rebellion group against the crown. And Rave ends up getting kidnapped by a group called the Guild of Nobles, which they're a group of dual beaded elementals, which the beads pretty much signify power. It's like the song that they can hear, which gives them their magic. And so the more beads that you have, the more powerful you are. And the only way for her to get out is death. But then in steps Conveger, who is the king like of another kingdom, and he came to be king by killing the old king and taking his place. And he is on a hunt for moon shards, which ends up bringing him to the prison where she is. And then there's like a whole entire history to Rave that is slowly uncovered throughout this story. So you get bits and pieces here and there, which I do remember that part kind of irritating me. While I was reading this, I was like, okay, if I get one more little snippet of her life with zero background to it and zero understanding of why this is relevant. I do remember that part kind of infuriating me, but the plot I think makes up for that. And this isn't anything groundbreaking, but I did think it was an interesting take on the dragons, and the rest of it is kind of where I say it's not really groundbreaking. I mean, most romantasy kind of is starting to bleed together for me, but I just remember really enjoying reading this book. I thought it was a very fun time, and I do remember that as I started understanding more of our main female characters' backstory, the more I got invested in this, and this was all I wanted to do. I just wanted to sit down and binge this, and it was like every second I had, I was picking this up. So, I do recommend this. If you're looking for a new romantasy, it's a fun one. Again, don't let the size intimidate you. The next one is going to be Funny Story by Emily Henry. This did just come out this past year, and I read it pretty much as soon as it came out. This one you're following Daphne, and she is about to get married, but then her fiance at the time goes to like his bachelor party and then comes back the next day and tells her that he actually realized that he's in love with his childhood best friend Petra. She's a librarian, so she doesn't have a lot of money, so she needs a roommate to be able to stay where she's at because she did move to her ex-fiance's like little town to live there, so she has no family or anybody to really help her. So for being at last minute, her best option is Petra's ex-boyfriend Miles. So they end up agreeing to be roommates, and he's more of like the messy, chaotic type where she is more neat and tidy. So they're definitely opposites, and they end up making a pact to make themselves feel better that for the summer they're gonna go out and do all these adventurous things together and then post pictures about it, kind of making it seem like they're dating without them ever really agreeing that they're fake dating. So you kind of have that aspect to it, but it was definitely a really fun read. I enjoyed this book. I think I finished it in like a day and a half. I couldn't put it down. But I will say I gave this 5 stars, and I did really love this story, and I do eventually want to go back and read it. I don't really think that there's a book that Emily Henry can write that I won't enjoy, but it's one that I haven't really thought about since reading it. So it got the 5 stars, but I don't know. I probably would give it more like 4.5, 4.75 stars if I had to go back and read it, just because of me not thinking about it really since. But I still would definitely recommend it because it's a fun time. It's an Emily Henry book. I mean, if she writes it, you got to pick it up, right? The next one was Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella in the Powerless trilogy. Is it called the Powerless trilogy? That's what I'm going to go with. Like I've said before, the first one really wasn't my favorite. I was not invested in the story at all. This novella, though, probably one of the best novellas I've ever read. I typically don't really rate novellas highly. I gave this one a 5 star. I absolutely love our main character, Adina. I knew how it was going to end, and it still destroyed me. And for being how short it is, I became attached to these characters. And honestly, I'm hoping in the third book, the third and final book, the main male character that was in here, I hope he's brought into that, because after reading this, the way that it ends, it kind of makes it seem like he's gonna have a little bit of a significant role in Reckless, but then Reckless came out and I don't even think he was mentioned in the whole book, which kind of disappointed me because I did really enjoy his character and I really thought he was going to have more of a role. Maybe he did and I just didn't put two and two together. Maybe I just didn't see the connection there. Maybe he was in there and it completely went over my head. I just don't remember him being in there, and that kind of disappointed me. Really, everything that happened, I'm still disappointed. She deserved more, okay? But yeah, I don't want to say anything about this. Like, I don't want to give the synopsis to this because it would be a spoiler. But this follows the same timeline as Powerless does. So you're getting to see what Adina's doing in the background while Peyton was doing everything else that you read in Powerless. So it's not, you don't have to read this at all, but I would recommend it because I personally thought that this was way better than Powerless, and I felt like the characters were a lot more enjoyable and lovable in this book than they were in that. So I would still recommend reading this. Then we have A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. This is Norse mythology. I gave this 5 stars. I loved this book. I'm very excited for the next one to come out. I have seen really mixed reviews on this, but I personally loved this book. You get banter within the first 10 pages, and it's top tier. I really enjoyed our female main character. I remember her infuriating me a couple times and being kind of annoying, but overall, really enjoyed her character. The ending to this, I really enjoyed it. Let me just read this real quick. So this says, bound in an unwanted marriage, Freya spends her days gutting fish but dreams of becoming a warrior and of putting an axe in her boorish husband's back. Freya's dreams abruptly become reality when her husband betrays her to the region's Jarl, landing her in a fight to the death against his son Bjorn. To survive, Freya is forced to reveal her deepest secret. She possesses a drop of a goddess's blood, which makes her a shield maiden with magic capable of repelling any attack. And it's been foretold that such magic will untie the fractured nation of Scotland beneath the one who controls the shield maiden's fate. Believing he's destined to rule Scotland as king, the fanatical Jarl binds Freya with a blood oath and orders Bjorn to protect her from their enemy. Desperate to prove her strength, Freya must train to fight and learn to control her magic, all while facing perilous tests set by the gods. The greatest test of all, however, may be resisting her forbidden attraction to Bjorn. If Freya succumbs to her lust for the charming and fierce warrior, she risks not only her destiny, but the fate of all the people she has sworn to protect. I'm not gonna lie, I think that the synopsis to this is kind of, I don't know, a little lackluster for what the book itself was. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed the tropes in it, and I felt like I didn't know a whole lot of backstory in Norse mythology, but I felt like this was really easy to follow along. She gives you, like, what you need to know without overcomplicating any of it. Next up is Wisteria by Adeline Grace. This is the third and final book in the Belladonna trilogy, and it didn't disappoint. I think I gave this it was either 4.75 or 5 stars. I've loved every single one of these books. I think Foxglove was probably my least favorite, but I think I still gave that like 4.25 stars. So it may have been my least favorite, but it was still really good. Everything about these books, I love them. They have like a dark gothic atmosphere to them. In the first one, you're following Signa and Death, and Signa can't die, but she can eat belladonna berries, which will like put her over the veil so she can speak with Death. And there's like a whole entire, it's like a dark, grim mystery YA, but sprinkling in a little bit of romance in there. And I really enjoyed the tension with Blythe and our main male character. I thought it was done very well. And I liked the mystery aspect, not quite as much as I did with Signa. I felt like that mystery aspect in there was a lot more enjoyable and more true to the mystery, where with Blythe, it's kind of like you get snippets of what's gonna happen, so it's not really a surprise at the end, but it was still a very, very enjoyable read. If you're looking for a YA kind of more dark, grim atmosphere, mystery with romance, I definitely recommend this series. I think that they're very fun and very enjoyable to read. They're very easy to follow along with too. Next is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This was her first like paranormal romance, and our main character is a vampire. Our main male character is a werewolf. It's everything I didn't know I needed. It was such a fun read. It made me feel like I was back in like the Twilight era in the best way possible. I'll read the synopsis to that one. So I feel like I've never really read the synopsis to Bride in any video that I've mentioned it on. A dangerous alliance between a vampire bride and an alpha werewolf becomes a love deep enough to sink your teeth into in this new paranormal romance. Misery Lark, the only daughter of the most powerful vampire councilman of the Southwest, is an outcast again. Her days of living in anonymity among the humans are over. She has been called upon to uphold a historic peacekeeping alliance between the vampires and their mortal enemies, the Wares, and she sees little choice but to surrender herself in the exchange. Again. Wares are ruthless and unpredictable, and their alpha, Lo Morland, is no exception. He rules his pack with absolute authority, but not without justice, and unlike the Vampire Council, not without feeling. It's clear from the way he tracks Misery's every movement that he doesn't trust her. If only he knew how right he was, because Misery has her own reasons to agree to this marriage of convenience, reasons that have nothing to do with politics or alliances, and everything to do with the only thing she's ever cared about. And she is willing to do whatever it takes to get back what's hers, even if it means a life alone in Were territory, alone with the wolf. I did really enjoy that whole mystery aspect to that one. I thought that it was a very fun, quick, easy to follow, kind of mind-numbing, but in a good way, read. I loved it, and I still actively think about that book all the time, and I really want to go back and do a reread very soon, because it was about this time last year. I think next month, I think February is when that came out, is when I read that. So hitting that year mark is kind of really making me want to reread it again. But yeah, super fun read. Highly recommend. Ali Hazelwood, again, is like Emily Henry for me. Doesn't disappoint. Next up is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is the first book I actually read by her, and I gave that 4.75 stars. I think Brianna and Jacob are probably one of my favorite romance characters I've read to date, I just feel like their chemistry is one of the most believable and, yeah, I guess just believable, like realistic, that I've read about to date. Like the way that she portrayed his anxiety was very well done. And then on top of that, like the way that Brianna is just able to pick up on it without asking so easily and just know how to help without being overly obvious was just so cute and well done and well put together. And again, I couldn't put that book down. I just really enjoyed it. It makes me really excited to read her next one. I don't think I'm going to go back and read the first book in that series, which is like A Part of Your World, and it follows Brianna's friend who's like a doctor, and she ends up falling for, I want to say, like a rancher or something like that. I don't think I'll go back and read that. I'm not super interested in their backstory, but I am excited to read the other ones. But yeah, Abby Jimenez is now, even though I've only read one book, it's probably not really fair to put her in that category, but an auto-buy author. I've already bought the next book, I just haven't got to it, but I plan on reading the other one that comes out this year without hesitation. So next up is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. Welcome to Phantasma. There are only 2 rules to the game: stay alive and don't fall in love. When Ophelia's sister disappears, there is only one way to save her. Ophelia must enter Phantasma, a deadly contest inside a haunted mansion, and claim its prize, a single wish. Phantasma is a maze of twisting corridors and lavish ballrooms of demons and temptations. Ophelia will face 9 challenges, each more dangerous than the last. There can only be one winner, and the other contestants will stop at nothing to eliminate their rivals. Every day, the house creates new monsters, but just as Ophelia's fears threaten to overwhelm her, a mysterious stranger offers her a bargain. Charming, arrogant, and infuriatingly attractive, Blackwell claims he can guide her through the lethal trials ahead. All he asks in return is 10 years of her life. Ophelia knows she shouldn't trust him. Blackwell doesn't seem dangerous, but appearances can be deceptive. Worse still, she feels a dark and irresistible attraction drawing them closer and closer. Her life is on the line, but in Phantasma, the only thing deadlier than losing the game is losing your heart. And it says A Court of Thorns and Roses meets Caraval, and while I do agree with that, I also felt like this was really reminiscent to The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I feel like if you mixed that with Caraval, it's a little bit more so than A Court of Thorns and Roses. And it was a very fun read. I gave that 5 stars, but I don't think looking back I would really give it 5 stars because I did find that the attraction between the two was a little too insta-lovey for me, and I really don't like that trope, so that definitely kind of knocks it down. I'd say more so like 4.5 stars, but it's enough to where I have actively thought about that book. I know the next one either comes out or it's already out, but they're standalones. They're interconnected standalones. The other one follows her sister, so you don't have to read it. I might eventually if I get in the mood, but odds are I probably won't. I still think that Phantasma was a fun read and an enjoyable time when I did read it. The stakes aren't as high as I was necessarily expecting them to be, just because of Blackwell and Ophelia's dynamic. So I feel like it would have been more enjoyable if that would have got dragged out a little bit more and maybe not so dependent on each other. It kind of would have raised the stakes and made it more enjoyable than it was. But overall, I still had a really fun time, and I think if you enjoy Caraval and you enjoyed The Serpent and the Wings of Night, I think you'd still enjoy this book. Next up, we have The Songbird and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the third. This is the third book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. This one you're following Misha, which she was brought in on the first book. I loved her so much when she was first introduced, so I was extremely excited when I heard that she was getting her own book because I did really want her backstory, and this book did not disappoint. So this one, Misha lost everything when she was forcibly turned into a vampire. Her home, her humanity, and most devastating of all, the love of the sun god to whom she had devoted her life. Now sentenced to death for murdering the vampire prince who turned her, redemption feels impossible. But when Misha is saved by Asar, the bastard prince of the House of Shadows with a past as brutal as his scars, she's forced into a mission worse than execution, a journey to the underworld to resurrect the god of death himself. Dare I say I might like this one better than The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is saying something because I loved that book, but I feel like Misha's story was so much more fun and had so much more depth to it than we had with, what was her name, Oraya and Rain? Oraya? I don't remember how to say it, but I feel like Misha's backstory just gave her so much more depth and likability. The way that everything panned out in her book just felt so much, I don't know how to describe it. It just felt more intimate and enjoyable and fun to read versus the first ones. There was kind of more high stakes in The Serpent and the Wings of Night. But this one's like a very close second. This one keeps you on your toes. I loved Asar and Misha's banter and like the way that they talk to each other. It was so much fun. I absolutely loved this book. The ending has me screaming, I need the next book. Pronto's book got 5 stars and it 100% deserves it in my opinion. I think Carissa Broadbent does such a good job at getting you immersed into the world without an extensive amount of world building. It's super easy to follow along and enjoyable to follow along. So for that, one of my top books of the year. The last one on this list is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is Bridgerton meets Faye, and it was done very well. I had way too much fun reading this. I really enjoyed the take on it. It was interesting. I've never read another book like this. So this one says, ever since she was cursed by a fairy, Theodora Eddings has had no sense of fear or embarrassment, an unfortunate condition that leaves her prone to accidental scandal. Dora hopes to be a quiet, sensible wallflower during the London season, but when Elias Wilder, the handsome, peculiar, and utterly ill-mannered Lord Sorcier, discovers her condition, she is instead drawn into dangerous fairy affairs. If her reputation can survive both her curse and her sudden connection with the least liked man in all of high society, then she and her family may yet reclaim their normal place in the world. But the longer Dora spends with Elias, the more she begins to suspect that one may indeed fall in love even with only half a soul. Yeah, if you really like Bridgerton, I highly recommend picking this up. There are more in the series and I do really want to get to them. The next one I believe is called 10,000 Stitches. And you're not following the same characters, but they're all interconnected standalones. And I want to read the next one. I haven't looked into like who it focuses on, but I'm kind of hoping that it focuses on her cousin that we read in here, or that we meet in here. Those were my top 10. Like I said before, they were not in any particular order. It was kind of just randomly, as I was scrolling, picking the ones that I felt have stuck with me the most this year. What were some of your top books that you read in 2024? And then if you don't know what else to put, if you don't have top books that really stuck with you, put a little party emoji. I'll put it right here. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date with all my future videos, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!